Okay, we're ready to get started again. If the board members can make sure you have your microphones on, please. Okay, good evening. The hour being 7:13 p.m. on Monday, January 23rd, 2023. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the Whole meeting. Bridget, can we have a roll call for the committee meeting, please?
Trustee Ketchmark?
Here.
Trustee Hendricks?
Here.
Trustee Leclerc?
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Here.
Absent are trustees Cote and Conroy, and President Garvey.
I'm here. Thank you. We have one item up. It's a continued discussion of a recommended annual food truck registration process, related business registration form, and proposed updates to Chapter 14 of the Business Licensing and Regulation and Appendix A of the Village Code. This is something we discussed at the previous Committee of the Whole meeting. Staff brought forward to us. There was some concerns, questions raised by the board. Staff's here tonight to update us and further discussion. So at this point, I'll turn it over to our village planner, Kate Portillo. Kate, you want to kind of update us where we've gone since the last meeting? And
Thank you, President Garvey and trustees. Yes, based on the discussion and some of the feedback from the past meeting, there have been revisions to what is before you, and the highlights of those would be that the fee has been adjusted to a $50 fee. There was a request for additional research on other communities' approaches. I had informally presented that, but I've put that in a chart and expanded the scope of that just a bit, so that was available for your review prior to this meeting. And finally, I have provided additional information on current fees for similar uses in the village. And I am available for your questions.
thank you. And the chart on the other towns in the summary is very helpful. I know there was some of the talk was about the fees at the last meeting that we're, based on practical experience from our, recreation staff, we want food trucks at some events. We want to make sure they're safe and they're licensed, but it's been challenging to get some of these trucks out to some of these events, and that was kind of the impetus for some of the discussion on the fees. But I'll open it up to questions and comments from the board at this time.
I would like to see it clarified, the difference between food trucks and ice cream trucks, because it seems to me, especially with the definition that we've currently got in the code, it seems to me that they're essentially the same thing, which effectively would mean that we already have a license for food trucks. But I understand that this is a better way to do it because it's taking into account health codes. But it would be my preference to include ice cream trucks in that definition simply because they're essentially the same thing, in my opinion, which I probably already said.
So my comment on that, on your feedback, is that after speaking to the front desk and finance department staff and who are more intimately familiar with the business licensing regulations, the village does have does currently require ice cream trucks to register at the rate of $100, but there's very little outside of that within our code that provides further definition. So we would just need direction as staff if there was an inclusion of ice cream trucks under that food truck licensing, that the fee would effectively be reduced.
Yeah, I mean, the definition that we have in the code right now, and in the memo, if it's peddling with an automobile or other vehicle driven by mechanical power, $100 per vehicle. I mean, obviously, we need to talk about the cost, but, I mean, that is the definition of what we're talking about it with a food truck. So either we have to clarify in some way, or it's all one category.
And we can work with the village attorney to clean that up.
How does, maybe we'll just go point by point. I know you might have, how does the rest of the board feel about that? Is there a reason we should have a distinction? I mean, it would require some additional recodification, basically probably eliminating the distinction or licensing fee for ice cream trucks and just including it. How does the rest of the board feel about that?
I feel like it would make sense to put them together. Otherwise, we might start making a different category for other types of foods also. So if it makes the most sense to be together and a reduced fee, then that's fine.
I agree.
me.
Likewise.
So the board agrees that food trucks, or ice cream trucks, basically you're saying ice cream is food, that ice cream should be treated as, same as ice cream trucks should be treated as food trucks, and then when we talk about the fee, we can decide, I mean, currently the fee for ice cream trucks is $100, but if they're going to face the same fee structure that you come to a consensus on for food trucks. Trustee Hendricks, was there other points that you had, or?
Well, going back to what we discussed last time, I don't think that we should exempt village events, and I think that, don't think I was alone in that. I don't know if we want to poll the board at this point, or if anyone has anything else to say on that.
What is the board's position on it? There was some discussion, and I mean, Trustee Conroy and Trustee Cote were here at the last meeting. They're not here tonight, but I think they raised some similar concerns. How does the rest of the board feel if the fee should somehow be waived for village events?
I think it should be the same for all food truck vendors because it's an annual business license.
I
And how we
agree. I mean,
decide
for $50 on it, that's pretty minimal.
Yeah.
Okay, so there seems to be a consensus from the board that there should not be a waiver of fees for food trucks that are at village events, that they should face the same fee structure and same regulations that other food trucks have. And understanding that, you know, we've had some difficulty getting food trucks in the past, but I mean, from a ordinance standpoint, the board seems to feel that it would be appropriate to treat them the same way. And if the village incentivizes food trucks in any other way, maybe it would, you know, should be done with some way other than waiving a fee in the ordinance. Okay. Trustee Hendricks, anything else on your?
Yes, there was a suggestion that was made about minimum distance from restaurants or schools or other establishments. And I suppose my opinion on that is that it makes good sense to have a minimum distance from restaurants to decrease that competition and pressure on those restaurants. I don't understand the impetus behind a minimum distance from schools. And if anyone has further information on that, the motivation for that, I'm happy to hear it.
Kate, would you like to address that?
Sure. My comments regarding that, those suggestions would be that typically in my research, when it comes to distance requirements, that does start to be more zoning related. I think the intention in bringing this forward to the board was to create conditions that are least prohibitive, that would encourage food trucks to operate in our village. We do recognize that that creates the unknown. We don't know if there might be issues in the future, and we could revisit this in the future. I would also make a similar comment to what I made at the previous meeting, that we are a small village and the enforcement of that would be challenging. We would be relying on the police department to essentially measure where a truck is located. And we, as other staff from Parks and Recreation have shared, at this time we don't have, that we're aware of a problematic set of circumstances surrounding food trucks operating in the village. But we're certainly open to future adjustments to this.
Understood. So if we did find a problem where somebody was parking their hamburger food truck right in front of Burger Antics all day, we could probably first talk with them, right? And if we continued to having a problem, then we could revisit the ordinance, right?
Yes, and keep in mind that the way we've worded the ordinance is that you have to be legally parked. And so if you were on Grand Boulevard and many other locations, there are parking time limits on these streets. And so, you know, barring something like Music on Grand, where there's already an overarching event, a truck would not be able to park in front of Burger Antics all day.
That's a great point, thank you. I think that was all I had.
Thank you, Trustee Hendricks. Any other comments from the board or concerns from the board?
I'm just summing it up, then we would not have a distance issue within the ordinance.
That is not what we are
Okay.
proposing at this time, but I do appreciate that there's an interest in us harmonizing what's been put before you in terms of food trucks with the peddling that currently exists in the code, and perhaps creating one definition for all those things.
So just to clarify that, is there going to be a distance limitation or location issue in the ordinance? Are you,
That has never been put before you, but if there's a consensus from the board that that's the direction you'd like to go, we can certainly take a closer look at that.
knowing the enforcement issues and raised by staff, and knowing that we can address it, does anyone feel there should be some kind of distance or location restriction other than what's basically stated about legally parked and the other restrictions? Do you think there's any need for any distance restriction in the ordinance?
Not at this time.
Not at this time, unless it becomes a problem.
Okay. Trustee Ketchmark, any other points, issues of concerns? Okay. So I think appreciate you coming back with the responses and feedback. I think the board has given you a consensus that they would like to treat the ice cream trucks the same as the rest of the food trucks and have one blanket ordinance for food trucks and definition for food trucks. And is the $50 fee the fee structure the village is looking for, an annual fee? That's the consensus from the board, and that it applies to whether it's a village-run event or any other event, that it's $50. And again, always subject to staff input and review and feedback after, let's hope we have a very busy spring and summer with these trucks, and we'll get some feedback. And in looking at the ordinances, and that's why I said it was very helpful from Kate to have the chart with the other research surrounding communities. One of the things, I think the consensus in the board is we want to regulate these, we want to make them safe and make sure they're licensed, but we don't want to create undue enforcement issues, or we don't have the staff to necessarily go out and patrol these things, set up a system that can be in place. Some of the other towns, it seems like could be pretty complex, and they're talking about daily fines and lower fees, but daily fines and things like that. I think we start with this structure and see how it works for our village. I think we're unique in some of these things, and we'll see how it works going forward. And, be subject to feedback and get feedback from, whether it's individual groups that have these or families that have these. We'll obviously, keep our ears out and listen to any feedback that we get coming back as to how difficult or cost prohibitive our ordinance is or anything as we go forward. So, okay.
President Garvey, I do have another
Sure,
detailed question, I'm sorry.
no problem.
In the memo, it also lists pedaling with a push cart or similar vehicle propelled by human power as $100 per vehicle. If we are reducing the food truck cost to $50, I think it is only fair to also reduce that to $50.
Understood,
Yes,
if that's the consensus.
yeah, I kind of assumed, the distinction between a push cart and an automobile, I didn't think we should charge someone who's pushing something by human power more than someone who's driving a vehicle.
Using more effort.
So
smarter.
I'm glad you brought that up, Trustee Hendricks. Okay. Kate, do you feel there's anything else, any other further direction you need from the board?
I feel like you've given me great direction, thank you.
Adam, is there anything else you think we need to address?
No, President Garvey, I'll work with staff on getting this ordinance before the board next meeting.
Okay. Thank you for all the work from staff and the input from the board. Okay, that's all the items we had under regular business on the board meeting. I will open it up again to public comment. Anyone on my right? Anybody on my left? Okay, hearing no public comment, I'd entertain a motion at 7:27 PM to go into executive session pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Open Meetings Act for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, and pursuant to Section 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for finding the meeting shall be recorded and enter into the basis of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, the motion to go into executive session for those purposes was made by trustee Leclerc, second by trustee Ketchmark. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark?
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks?
Aye.
Trustee Leclerc?
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're adjourned into executive session at 7:28 PM. Tim, are we going to do it here in the boardroom? Okay, so we'll